swath grazing of annuals may fit here in the High Plains region. First is a bridge from fall grazing when summer pasture is expensive or quality is poor. And oftentimes we see that at the end of the summer, first part of the fall, that the quality of pasture may be decreasing, and so this might provide a bridge from summer pasture to some crop residue such as wheat stubble or some corn stalks in that late September to mid-November time frame. I think windrow grazing might be used on some higher quality on some higher quality annuals if it's cut early, so the quality is fairly high and will work good for some calves or replacement heifers. It also might work well on reducing haying cost on some marginal land. This also might work well with some winter calving cows. If we're calving in January and February and we got cows next to an area where we can windrow graze, this would be a way to reduce harvested feed costs to those cows. And finally, if we're in a situation where we don't have access to some crop residue or winter pasture is expensive, it may be that windrow grazing of some summer annual forages will provide us an opportunity to reduce harvested feed cost. I think we also need to consider swath grazing perennial forages as an option as well. Windrow grazing alfalfa grass aftermath in late fall with weaned calves or replacement heifers, or perhaps instead of trying to take that fourth cutting of hay off as hay, we go ahead and wait till we get into mid to late October prior to a hard freeze, go ahead and swath that crop, leave the windrows in the field, and then come back and graze those windrows with some weaned calves or some replacement heifers. I think this also can be used as a tool on some wet meadows. Maybe we'll graze those wet meadows in the spring and early summer, let that high quality regrowth come back, and then go ahead and swath that crop in late July or in mid to late August and use that as a winter feed source for the cows as we would with hay, except now we'll just go ahead and windrow graze through the winter. Some things that I think we need to be thinking about as we consider swath grazing as a tool for a winter feed. First, livestock water is really a critical thing needed for windrow grazing to work. And so if you've got some crop ground and you're considering windrow grazing, I think you really need to think about having water there. Otherwise, you're going to be really challenged if you're needing to haul water for that to work. If we're using summer annuals, we want to swath that crop in late summer or early fall. We want to try to make the swaths as heavy and as deep as possible. By making the swaths heavy and deep, we reduce the surface area that is exposed to weathering and reduce some of the weathering that occurs. I think we want to use temporary electric fence to limit access to the windrows, not just give cattle access to the whole field. And depending upon the class of livestock that you're using to graze that windrow feed, I think you can be thinking about moving the fence as often as every day, or you might be extending that out as much as to every 4 or 5 days or as long as a week. But you need to realize that as you extend the period of time that you have them grazing a specific area, I think we're going to see more waste as they bed on and defecate on those windrows than you would if you move the fence more frequently. We can test forage in the windrow just as we would if we were testing it in a bale, and I encourage those who are considering windrow grazing to go ahead, get several grab samples from windrows at different points in the field. Go ahead and send that forage in, have it tested so you know what you have and know what you might need if you're going to be needing to supplement on that, or if what's there will meet the cattle's requirements or the performance goals that you have for those cattle. One question that we often get is, can cattle graze through snow? What happens if we get snow and we got windrows? Are we going to lose the availability to use those windrows? Really, cattle, if they know the windrows were there, will work through snow to get to them. The only challenge that we can have sometimes is if we get a heavy, deep snow and it crusts, then we're going to need to go find a way to break the crust next to the windrow so the cattle can dig down and get to it. But really, we find that those who've used windrow grazing indicate that the snow is not really a major issue to keep them from using the windrows. And finally, I would encourage those who are considering windrow grazing maybe to go ahead and just leave an area of a field that they're going to bale as swaths the first year and try it on a limited basis, get some experience with it, and see if you really like it before you make the plunge and leaving a lot of windrows in the field. In summary, I think the On-farm research as well as university research done by the University of Nebraska Lincoln and Colorado State University shows that swath grazing can significantly reduce harvested feed and equipment costs as we think about winter feed alternatives. Another thing that swath grazing does is it captures nutrients, reducing fertilizer expense for subsequent crops on the ground where it was harvested. And finally, I think the High Plains region, with our seasonal precipitation, has a really favorable climate for swath grazing. If you have any questions about windrow grazing or swath grazing, please feel free to contact me, Aaron Berger, University of Nebraska Lincoln Extension Educator. My email is there on the screen, and my phone number is 308-235-3122. I have also written a NEB guide along with Jerry Valesky titled Windrow Grazing, and it's available at the University of Nebraska at www.ianrpubs.unl.edu.